Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello, you're listening to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to West Lothian's finest football team, Livingston Football Club, and proudly sponsored by Starna Apparel. My name's Ewan, and as always, I'm joined by Angus. Angus, kind of mixed bag for yourself on the Livy front this weekend. Win for the men's team, defeat for the women's team, but how are you doing anyway?
Yeah, as you say, a mixed fortunes within the results there. However, I'll take one positive from it, Ewan, that from both games I didn't get completely soaked. Managed to avoid the dreadful weather that was taking place. Luckily, at the women's game in particular, the rain stopped right before kickoff and only started straight after full time as well. So very pleased with that. Avoided that. But yeah, we'll get into talking about all the action and the ins and outs of both games. But yeah, what about yourself, Ian? How are you doing?
I wish I could say the same in terms of avoiding the soaking. I was coaching on Saturday morning during the amber weather warning. And yeah, from
The weather warning was a Livy fan, right?
Yeah, exactly. So from 8 o'clock till 12:15, I was outside in the elements. I actually came home, put my stuff in the washing machine, and my stuff actually came out of the washing machine drier than it went in, which is a wee bit bizarre. But yeah, all good at this end, and obviously delighted that we've got a win to talk about as well. But as always, search for Talk Livy on your preferred podcast streaming site where you can follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also catch up on all our episodes that we've done today.
We'll kick things off by discussing Livy's victory over Motherwell as the Lions recorded their first home Premiership win of the campaign.
Next up, the Lionesses were back in action and travelled to Glasgow to take on Queen's Park, but it would be an agonising late defeat for our ladies.
It's the return of Talk Livi Question Time as we answer questions sent in to us by the listeners.
And finally, we'll look ahead to our next game as the Lions make the trip to Rugby Park to take on Kilmarnock.
The Lions took on Motherwell hoping to record a first victory over the Steelmen since February 2020. They would do just that with goals from Bruce Anderson and Sean Kelly securing a 2-0 win. Ewan, what were your thoughts on the match?
Yeah, I wasn't able to make the game, so I've kind of caught the highlights, and I'll catch up on the full 90 minutes later in the week when it's posted up on LFC Live. But yeah, kind of keeping in touch with the game over the Twitter updates and things like that. It was interesting, first of all, to see starting lineup. We spoke about Dan Mackay possibly coming in on that right hand side. He obviously came on their second half up at McDermott Park for Jamie Brandon as a right wing back, and that's how we started the game. Luigi De Lucas also came back in for Tom Parks. That was another one we kind of floated the idea of, and Stephen Kelly was back in as a kind of number 10 with Joel Newbley. So there was a few tweaks to the team. Andrew Shinnie dropped out as well for Scott Pittman. What was your kind of initial thoughts on the starting 11? As I mentioned, it was options that we'd kind of floated about when talking about it on the preview.
Initially, when I seen that, we had Newbley, Anderson, Mackay and Kelly, I was, quite happy. I was feeling, that's very kind of like attacking minded. I was kind of maybe hoping that we'd go to like maybe a 4-3-3 in that regard. with maybe having Anderson flanked by Newbley and Mackay, but it wasn't to be. It was to be the back five just there. But it was a positive team selection. Even Pittman and Holt within there. Talking to the guys before the game, and that it did seem as if that there was an intent to be a wee bit more attacking, and thankfully that proved to be dividends in the game itself as well. But yeah, I think I would like to imagine that most kind of people had a similar reaction to it.
Yeah, certainly. First glance at the team, Dan Mackay, somebody I've been really excited to see getting more game time at Livy. I thought he was one of the bright sparks in that kind of disappointing defeat at Ibrox in the League Cup. I thought he was probably our best attacking outlet in that game. And having seen him a few times with Inverness over the years, he's somebody that I've always kind of admired and would have liked to have seen in a Livingston jersey. So it was really good to see him, albeit maybe in a slightly more unorthodox position as a wing back. I normally expect him to be a kind of out and out wide player or kind of inside as one of those tens. But as you say, it added a little bit more attacking output from those areas of the park. That's not a disrespect on Jamie Brandon. I think Jamie's had a really solid start to the season, but Dan Mackay is naturally a very forward thinking player. So I think he added a little bit of spark in that area. And by all accounts, from what I've seen off the game and from what I've seen online and the comments about the game, I think Dan Mackay was pretty much a standout for us. So a very good first league start for Dan Mackay. But kind of looking at the game itself and the opportunities that we created, I think Dan Mackay was pretty instrumental in a lot of the opportunities we did create. There was one he managed to get to the byline, cut back for Stephen Kelly, albeit good block by Motherwell centre half in there. Best chance I think Motherwell had, you can't really class as a chance, which was a pot shot from Dan Casey from just about the halfway line, which Jamal Georges managed to tip over his bar. But I think the kind of theme from the updates I saw in Angus, I'm sure you'll be able to kind of go into it in a little bit more depth, but it seemed that we were causing a few problems getting in behind Motherwell at the weekend, and that all comes about with the red card right on half time, which kind of changes the context of the game a lot. And on first viewing, it looks very, very minimal contact. It's not until it's kind of zoomed in that you see that Lennon Miller has just clipped Dan Mackay, and it's great wing play by Dan Mackay. I used to say it to kids that I was coaching who played in those positions, try and get across the front of your man, make them have to make a decision whether they leave you to go by them or if they make the decision to take you down. I think Lennon Miller's tried to let Dan Mackay go and just rely on his goalkeeper, but inadvertently he's kind of caught him, and you would say it's a red card because you would expect Dan Mackay to kind of get through on goal from that position with the pace that he's got. But as I say, that's kind of changed the context of the game. Might also add great play by Bruce Anderson in the build-up to that opportunity as well. But I think the biggest positive is, I talked about it in the Celtic game, the timing of Celtic's second goal really killed the game off. And I think us getting that early goal in the second half from Bruce Anderson has made a massive difference and probably settled us down a lot and stopped us getting a little bit desperate maybe against the Motherwell team, who you'd expect to kind of sit in and try and play on the break, especially with a man down. And the goal, it's great build-up play, great ball out wide by Scott Pittman. He's probably cut out maybe what we would normally do, which would be another couple of passes in there possibly, but he's got the ball out wide to Mackay. He's managed to beat his man, and it's a great ball across. And Bruce Anderson, great little run, across the front post, and he's managed to sneak it into the far corner. And then we get the penalty, which kills the game off. Again, decent play by Newbley on the left-hand side. Little ball into Penrice by Stephen Kelly, and it's as clear a penalty as you'll see over the weekend. McGabby's just absolutely floored Penrice just inside the box, and it was brother versus brother for the penalty. Wonder if they talked about that before the game, if a penalty was to get awarded. But Sean Kelly, 2 weeks on the bounce, he sent the keeper the wrong way and dispatched to that and gave us that little bit of a cushion in the game. And from then on, I think we had another few opportunities to possibly add to the scoreline. Had another penalty awarded, although overturned by VAR, because it was just outside the box, and another opportunity for Stephen Bradley when I think he just came on the park at that point, a back heel that he's put wide of the front post. But I think there's so many positives to take. The fact that we have got that first home Premiership win of the season right before the international break, clean sheet, and ending that Motherwell hoodoo. All we need to do now is go to Fir Park and end that one as well. That would be a very satisfying season if we could just end this bogey team that is Motherwell.
Yeah, very, very pleased with, the kind of way that we played. I think the first half there was maybe a wee bit of elements of kind of frustration coming back. We did seem to start quite brightly, Ewan, but something that you probably would have missed is that we were maybe being a little bit too cautious at times within that first half. There was a lot of times that we were picking the ball up in Motherwell's half, and within two passes it was either back to Obalai, who was the deepest defender, or it was back to Shamal George, and it just seemed as if there was times where, I don't know if that was part of the game plan. Maybe it was to stay compact or whatever like that. But there was opportunities that we could have maybe sprung forward a little bit more. Obviously, sending off kind of changed that a little bit. You could see the kind of momentum was in our favour, and that increased emphasis on being more positive. Simple stuff from like Dan Mackay there, like the red card. It's a very simple run. Miller can't really do much about it, to be honest. And yeah, going by the sports scene, highlights and all of that, you can see like the wee clip that is there, and it is an unfortunate one, but it is one that's a red card. But that kind of run we've been missing from the last kind of couple of weeks and stuff like that. And then you look at the goal as well, the one that opens it up. Mackay's not doing anything there that's like outrageous. He's just committing a man, and he's just using his pace, and he's getting to the byline and cutting a ball across. When was the last time we'd kind of seen that happen? And me, and I love a winger, and seeing somebody just simply doing that, even if it just gets like a corner, it's so much more encouraging to your team in that, rather than just not kind of doing anything. So I was really, really happy with Dan Mackay's performance there, and when you've got Bruce Anderson in the box there and you give him that kind of service, he's going to score goals. I mean, that's 6 already for the season. He's the highest scoring Scottish striker in our league in that right now as well. He's one of the top. I think he's maybe fourth or fifth in the league as well. It just goes to show you, if you give him the opportunities, he's going to take them away. And I think that's a really, really exciting partnership that we could possibly see, for the rest of the season. And yeah, hopefully, if we can get, Dan Mackay on that side, and then if Newbley can start going again on the left-hand side, Penrice is, chipping in with a good amount of, assist. I know, obviously, he won the penalty there. If that counts as an assist or not, you'll have Montano there as well. We'll have plenty of options on either side, and that will just, I think we'll get onto this at the question time later as well, Ewan, but having that kind of excitement from those kind of players, it will give the club a home much more of a boost in that. Even though we missed out in the top 6 that season, that we had Forrest, Bailey and Anderson, or Forrest, Anderson and Newbley, and that you felt happy watching us. You felt good like watching the team and whatnot, because it was good, enjoyable football to watch. And I think that is, as well as the result, is a massive kind of thing that's there as well. But yeah, very, very pleasing to see that. I think that there's a smattering of other players as well. Thought Pittman and Holt in the middle were just so busy and so getting onto the ball, and it was a classic kind of performance from the pair of them. Penrice as well. I think that at the start of the season, in all honesty, I was thinking that Penrice might be struggling for a little bit of game time. Obviously, Montano had been in electric form, but since Penrice just came into the team again, he's arguably been one of our players of the season. I would say he's been so consistent, and even in the games that we've maybe been a bit poorer, he's been one of the bright outlets. And I think today, Saturday, there was another showing for it. He does absolutely tremendously to win that penalty as well. But yeah, good feeling around this. I think there's maybe a wee bit of frustration that we're now going into an international break. We maybe want to keep this kind of momentum up, but yeah, pleasing.
Yeah, as you say, there's a lot of positives to take. You kind of talked about the style of play and having that more attacking vibe to that starting 11 with the likes of Mackay, Kelly, Newbley, Anderson all in the side. I think what Mackay offered is that just directness in terms of taking on his man. With Montano having been out recently, you've kind of lost Montano's directness that he has in terms of running with the ball and carrying it, taking on 2 or 3 players, getting you up the park. So we have probably missed that a little bit, and that's not a disrespect to James Penrice. I think Penners has been excellent whilst Montano has been out, but he's a slightly different player in that regard. And I feel that's maybe been a positive, getting Mackay on that side to offer what Montano does just on the opposite side of the park. You could see that he's committed men for both the red card and the opening goal. You touched on Bruce Anderson there as well. I think it was 7 goals Bruce got last year, and he was our joint top goal scorer. He's sitting on 6 for the season already, 3 in the League Cup, 3 in the Premiership. I'd fully expect Bruce to go, and given his form so far this season, to go and hit double figures is a pretty bare minimum, and he's on course to potentially doing that before the winter break at this rate that he has started the campaign. But we've spoke about it probably the last 18 months. Bruce needs service. He's that type of striker. He will score you goals in and around that 18-yard box if he gets the correct service, and he's probably been missing that for quite a few months, to be honest. So getting players, those attacking threats on the park who can provide that service for Bruce, he's your biggest threat. He's our biggest threat on scoring goals. And if you get balls into the right areas for Bruce, there is absolutely no doubt that he will go and hit double figures, possibly pushing on to 15 goals, maybe. I think it was 13 that he got in his opening season for us. And I'm pretty sure he would have hit the 15 mark had it not been for kind of being out for the last couple of months of that season. So that's a big positive. Getting Bruce service into those areas where he's going to cause teams damage. And he had that with Dan Mackay at the weekend. He is somebody that I've really looked forward to seeing in the side, and kind of gutted I couldn't watch the game because he seemed to prove me right a little bit as well with him being in the side. But overall, really positive result. Getting that first home Premiership win of the campaign. And when you look at it, we've gone under the radar a lot, and I think the manager deserves a little bit of credit for that, because I do think it's quite deliberate, all the budget chat. We've spoke about this before. I think it's been very deliberate, putting us under the radar, playing down expectations, and we've gone kind of unnoticed. And it's the first time on Sports Scene they've spoke about us being in, Livingston have had a reasonable start to the season, haven't they? Everyone spoke about how good a start Motherwell have had this season. They're sitting on the same points as us after the same number of games. We've only lost 3 competitive games this season out of 14, 2 of those being at Ibrox and 1 against the current treble holders. We have had a very decent start to the season, and I think the fans need to start getting on board with that a little bit more. I think the fans have let those defeats to the Old Firm really cloud what has been a very positive start to the season, especially when you take into consideration how poor our end to last season was. So there's a lot to be positive, quietly positive about, I would say. And yeah, I think we've picked up that win. I think we did need to get that win before the international break. As you say, maybe a slight dampener that we now need to go 2 weeks before our next game. But we're probably coming into a run of games that you would fancy us to maybe pick even more points up in.
Yeah, hopefully so. I mean, Kilmarnock next, you're kind of looking at perhaps like a similar kind of setup and a kind of team, physically strong, can cause you some issues in that. But it's not necessarily somebody who should be massively fearing as well. And yeah, by the way that we've played so far, as you mentioned, it's only the Old Firm who have beat us. And, we have played Aberdeen, we've played Hibs, we've played Motherwell, we've played St Mirren, we've played some of the better teams in the league. The only one that we haven't played yet is probably Hearts, who, there's discontent even around them at the moment in that as well. So yeah, there's nothing for us to kind of be, doom and gloom about at the moment. I think that it's going to be a tight league again. And I think that maybe that was what was coming into people's minds. Now there's like 6 points between bottom and, I think we're 6 at the moment, or 10. So it is going to be tight. And I think that, as the season goes on, we're maybe going to see maybe a gap start to appear. But, we've played 8 games, got 10 points. If we can kind of keep up that kind of idea of us having more points than games played, by the end of the season, you'd like to think that we'd probably be safe by hitting that kind of 39, 40 point mark. That's the goal at the start of every season. And, if we can get to Christmas again and we're in a healthy position that can set us up for the rest of the season, then, that would be absolutely tremendous for us yet again. But I think in terms of the negativity, perhaps that's kind of came with that has maybe been some of the performances, I would say. Most maybe notably, the kind of like the Ross County away, St Johnstone away, where we have maybe been a bit fortunate to kind of come away with points there, albeit, it does show a great kind of battle and attitude and stuff like that. However, I think that, this performance there against Motherwell, that is much more encouraging in terms of, it's something that the fans can be happy with. It was enjoyable to watch. There was excitement to see. There was something you could clearly see had been worked on and everything like that. And, maybe it's just taking a little bit of time for that to kind of gel together, and hopefully it's, the start of something like that being maintained for the rest of the season.
We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Lionesses returned to action as they made the trip to Glasgow to take on Queen's Park. A late goal from the host would see them secure a 3-2 victory. Angus, you were obviously at the game as always, doing all the social media updates. But unfortunate for the girls, Queen's Park have been pretty free scoring. I think they've averaged 4 goals a game this season, so maybe a little bit unfortunate not to come away with anything.
Yeah, I think when you look at the nature of the game, that's possibly the case, yeah. I think that, the first half in particular was very kind of even. I think both teams hit the bar and had like a one-on-one that were both saved by the goalkeeper. Other than that, for the first half, it was just kind of like a very scrappy, competitive affair. They were both kind of feeling each other out and finding it hard to kind of break one another down. And both kind of found joy getting, a couple of the wide players in behind. Erin Burns had the 2 kind of opportunities for her, one hitting the bar and one the goalkeeper making a very, very brave save, whilst, Shania at the other side for us has stayed big and, kept us in the game going into half-time 0-0. But come out the second half, we scored basically in the first minute of the game. Ashley Elizabeth, I think that she had maybe one of her better games, with a wee bit more, effective in the kind of the hold up and kind of playing like the balls off of like to the advanced midfielders and stuff like that as well. So I think that she'll be delighted to have got on the score sheet with, pretty good finish that she's had there. From on there on, I think that we did probably struggle to create, enough kind of opportunities, in kind of open play. I think that in that aspect, I don't think that Queen's Park were essentially, piling massive amounts of pressure on us, and that, the opportunities could have been there for us to take advantage with some of the personnel that we had, but we didn't seem to, be creating an abundance there. And I think that, as you said there, they've been free scoring in the league, perhaps. The lassie Ellie Kane, I think is league top goal scorer. She's in double figures already. Has been player of the month the past 2 times, and I think that the lassie Abby Callahan as well has been very, very prominent for them. So they've always kind of got that threat in the park, and effectively, the lassie Kane's picked up the ball and she's curled one into the top corner. And when you're playing some of the better teams in this division, that's probably going to happen sometimes when you allow them to have that extra wee bit of space. I think they were a wee bit shell shocked after that, because Queen's Park literally kind of went up the park, won the ball again, and then they had a couple of shots on target before the lassie, I think it's Robin Gallagher, fired it in to make it 2-1. And, in the space of like the 78th minute to like the 81st, where we're suddenly 2-1 down. Again, we showed kind of good resiliency though to bounce back from it. The ball ends up to Lucy Watt, who's, slide it underneath the goalkeeper. And you're looking at that there where, maybe the momentum was going to come to our side. But again, I think that we didn't really kind of create too many chances, and a long ball's going over the top, and the lassie Callahan's been able to slot it underneath Shania to make it 3-2 to them. And I think maybe on the basis of the chances created, you'd probably argue that Queen's Park did deserve to take the 3 points in that. I think that there's maybe elements of frustration for ourselves that we could have maybe done a little bit more. I think to cause them some more problems, to maybe take advantage of that ourselves. But as I'm saying, it's a very, very competitive game between the two teams. They are second place in the league. Again, I think with wee slight tweaks and improvements in that, I don't think that there's any reason as to why we can't compete against a team like that. I think that, the knowledge we've probably gained from this kind of game for the reverse game when we play them at home could do us, the world of good. The more kind of familiar that we're kind of playing in certain formations or certain personnel getting involved in certain areas. Yeah, I think it's, a missed opportunity, I guess, but, nothing to be massively downhearted about.
Yeah, as you say, kind of getting level late on in the game, you would hope to try and see the game out and at least come away with a point. That old phrase, when you've maybe not played as well in the second half of the game, as you mentioned there, Queen's Park had a few opportunities, but when you've maybe not played as well, just try and make sure you don't lose the game. And with the girls getting level late on, that'll probably be the biggest frustration.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, at any level, if you're going to concede 3 goals in a 10-minute space, you can't really have too many complaints if you end up on the receiving end of a loss, in all honesty. For the most part, we did compete very well. I think that it's just essentially sharpening up on a wee couple of things in that. I think that we'll kind of regroup from it. I think that we're still kind of getting used to certain types of formation and playing certain people in certain positions and stuff like that. Whereas, I don't know if Queen's Park are maybe a wee bit more settled. They also just have, very good kind of creative players in that who can create kind of chances from nothing. Maybe we need to be a wee bit more capable of that, being a wee bit more brave in terms of, creating chances, advancing runs. We've been playing with kind of wing backs and all of that. Did we maybe utilise that as well as we've done in previous games? Possibly not. But it's something that we're probably going to look back at, and we'll learn from the mistakes, and hopefully in the next one we can bounce back with a good performance. I think we've got Stirling Uni at home this Sunday, and we played them in one of the friendlies during the break there, and it's a good chance for us to bounce back, I think, and we can hopefully put that behind us and respond with a good performance again.
Yeah, here's hoping the girls can get a positive result against Stirling Uni. You mentioned there kind of a wee tweak in shape for the game as well. Do you reckon there's an element with a number of new players coming in over the summer that Mike's maybe still tinkering and trying to find out what his best 11 is, what his best setup is? Is there maybe still an element of that?
Probably so, yeah. I think that comes with the nature of just having that kind of a bigger squad. I think that there's a lot of central kind of players as well. I think that we have a lot of kind of midfielders or number 10s and stuff like that. So it's trying to kind of find areas for them to be, kind of suitable in there. A lot of kind of midfielders try to fit into there. And I think that, most of the personnel did kind of put themselves about fairly well. I think Courtney McAvoy got man of the match, player of the match again, and another kind of strong showing from her. I think Shannon Mulligan had one of her better games of the season as well. So yeah, I think that there's still perhaps an early element of, try to figure out who can do what kind of roles and stuff like that, as well as within the kind of formation. I think you've got like a settled back line, and there's competition for spaces and for places in the squad, and I think that is a good thing when it's kind of utilised pretty well, and you can kind of get that friendly competition between the players. But yeah, I think it's as long as you kind of like the performances are merited and rewarded for what they're kind of doing. Still very early into the season. There's a long way to go, and there's a lot of things we can figure out about our own players or our own selves, and I'm pretty sure that will happen. It's the return of Talk Livi Question Time as we answer questions sent in by the listeners. First up, we've got one from Gary Kerr. Ewan, where is Teto?
Where is Teto? Is Where is Teto going to become the replacement game for Livingston fans from Where's Wally? Essentially, are we just going to start having... I'm pretty sure that actually appeared on the forum during the week, was a picture of the stadium with a Where's Wally thing, trying to find Teto in amongst it, if I'm right in saying.
Teto joined. What time is the stadium open? What time is the club shop?
Yes, the usual queries on the forum, yes, about club shop opening time, ticket sales, and where is Teto. Yeah, where is Teto? I think there was an update on regards to that. On a serious note, with regards to Teto, David mentioned that he's hoping he's actually spoken with the South African national team manager about getting him into the under-23 squad, which would be hugely beneficial in terms of getting his governing body endorsement. So that would be a massive plus point if we could then get him in January. As a result of that, I believe he's been able to play in certain types of bounce games, not recorded as official friendlies or anything like that, because he doesn't have that official paperwork. I think he turned out for Broxburn in a bounce game and scored a couple of goals, which is very positive to hear. And a little note from Callum Carson was that he managed to nutmeg Scott Pittman twice when he was in training, so for a session. So Pitt's up your game one in training, but shows that the boy's got a bit of confidence if he's willing to come in and nutmeg a club legend like that a couple of times in a rondo. So yeah, very, very positive on that front from what Davey said about Teto, and hopefully he does get that endorsement and we can see him in a Livingston jersey the second half of the season. But yes, I believe Teto is kicking about, but is he in a disguise? We don't know.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that as well, from speaking to a couple of people who have had the opportunity to watch Teto in action so far in this kind of training and stuff like that. Apparently, he's a very, very good player. So hopefully that good things come to all who wait, and in a matter of time, we'll be able to enjoy seeing this, talent at our club. But until then, maybe just a little bit of patience. Obviously, that's hard to come by these days with football, but bear with them. Hopefully, this will reap rewards, and trust in the process is what they say, isn't it, Ewan?
Exactly, and I'm sure we'll be rewarded for waiting for our little South African prince to come and pull on the Livingston jersey and walk out at the Tony Macaroni Arena. But next question is from Colin Brown, my favourite of the Brown family over Callum Brown.
Well, everyone's favourite.
He's everyone's favourite Brown. But now that we've paid the Motherwell hoodoo, thank the Lord, and showing that apart from we'll change the phrasing of that to the old firm, we can certainly compete with every team in the league. Is it a sign that top six is finally within our reach this season? And guess what's your thoughts?
I'm not so sure yet. I think I need to see a wee bit more of the kind of, if that performance can be replicated against Motherwell, yeah, why not? But we also have on the other hand maybe the performances against Ross County and St Johnstone and stuff like that, where it's still kind of maybe a little bit on the ropes. Perhaps with the league being so tight in that, we could maybe, if we continue this form, there's no reason as to why not. We've only lost to the Rangers and Celtic so far. It is whether we'll be able to maintain that. But yeah, I think for now, again, what you usually kind of say, you in 10th place is the kind of aim and stuff like that. I think until that's kind of a wee bit more out of the question, then we can maybe start to look until then. I think that's kind of especially for myself for this season, the thoughts is basically safety because of the budget kind of cuts and all of that. But you never know what can happen.
Yeah, I think it would be fantastic if we could push on top six again this season, which you would assume would see you safe again in another campaign in the top flight. Whether after 8 games, I would say I'm convinced that we are going to be doing that. I'm kind of with you. I'm on the fence with whether we'll be in the scrap or maybe pushing on that because the league is so tight. I think there's so little to choose between the vast majority of the league so far this season. Even throw into that the likes of Hearts, the likes of Aberdeen, the likes of Hibs, who have been able to spend, in Scottish football terms, big money on players coming in. So even they've not hit the ground running this campaign. So it's difficult to kind of, I think come Christmas time, you can maybe start seeing teams jostle for position a little bit more and can maybe start to get a better picture of what the league will look like come May. But the thing I would say is that I think there's a lot of things to be quietly positive about. I said that in the review of the Motherwell game. We've shown that we're a bit harder to beat this season. We've not been conceding as many sloppy goals as we did in the second half of last season. Games like, as much as the performances weren't fantastic against the likes of Ross County, St Johnstone, we've ground the result out, which is probably not a quality we showed last year. In particular, I think last season we only took 4 points from losing positions the whole campaign. So even going there and just nicking a point when you've not played particularly well, I think just shows that the team's got a little bit of character, a little bit of fight about them. And we have had a little bit of a change in terms of some personnel coming in over the summer, personnel leaving, changing shape, changing system that we've been playing, maybe a slight change in approach with Davy kind of talking about wanting to be a bit more solid. So maybe he's building on, as you say, the second half of that Motherwell game, there was a lot in an attacking sense to be impressed by. Maybe Davy's been looking at trying to build that base from the back and just get that settled in first, being solid, difficult to beat, and then you can start looking further forward and higher up the pitch in terms of how you can hurt teams. So I think it will be a slow burner for us this season, but there is a lot to be positive about at the start of this campaign.
I think something that's worth mentioning as well is that, in all honesty, you in 6 months' time, or maybe even like less than that, maybe 4 months' time, would you be surprised if likes of Aberdeen, Hearts, and Hibs all had new managers again, and that could create like a new manager bounce? We've seen that last season. Aberdeen somehow managed to finish third after a really disgraceful first half of the season. Hearts seem to be, on the way to greatness. It's apparently the greatest Hearts team that's, ever played football, finishing fourth. And then Hibs just being a shiver of shambles, in all honesty. But even like Motherwell as well. Motherwell were only seeming to be kind of heading towards the bottom, going that run when Kettlewell comes in. And they end up narrowly missing out on the top six. If they had it maybe a couple of games beforehand, they probably would have made the top six. Those elements. The Scottish League's very weird in that way, where I think the first half of the season can almost mean nothing, essentially. A team could be sitting maybe 11th, and then suddenly, boom, they'll be fourth place for some reason. Yeah, but if we can be that steady Eddie through the whole season, possibly could sneak in there. But yeah, we'll head on to the next one. We've covered a wee bit there. Hopefully, that goes into our favour. But Gary Grant will be asking, will there be rolls and macaroni on the matchday menu now we have the Morton's Roll Dude in charge? I do like the thought of calling him the Morton's Roll Dude.
Yeah, John McElvogue, our new owner, the Morton Rolls Dude. God, poor John. He's just the Morton's Roll Dude. Well, I mean, he's done a little gesture at the weekend there, and fans got a free hot drink on arrival at the stadium. They got vouchers and things like that. It was both home and away supporters.
You're missing out on everything.
I know. What a week! What a week to choose to miss the game. Unbelievable. But yeah, so he's getting off to a flyer so far. Whether we will see Morton's Rolls appear on the menu, I remember going to Green at Morton, just talking Morton's. Morton used to have, it was like a breakfast van type thing, and you used to be able to get a square sausage and tatty scone roll at the football. God, that was fantastic. Will we see pie on a roll? That's a delicacy over at Alloa.
That is a better suggestion than a macaroni roll.
Pie on a roll.
Imagine the specialty pie on a roll with macaroni with a hot drink.
Oh, it does sound delightful. We do have award-winning Scotch pies from the good people at Food to Go as well. Little Scotch pie, keep it real. Scotch pie on a Morton's roll. John, if you're listening in, can we make it happen? We'll wait and see. If we can make that happen. But yeah, moving on to the next question. There's kind of 3 elements to it from Stuart Cragen. What can be done to attract more fans to games? Brackets. I know they do the free ticket for schools clubs already. This is one we get asked a lot, Angus. So I kind of sporadically choose when to add it in, but we didn't have maybe as many questions.
You want the blunt answer for this, Ewan?
Oh, go for it. Go blunt.
There isn't any. If we've been on this good of a being genuinely honest, if we've been on like this good of a steady run as a Premiership team and it's still not really doing an awful lot to kind of improve it. I don't know, obviously season tickets have been kind of going up, but in terms of the success that we've had, it doesn't really kind of mirror it. And it is just unfortunate that, the location of the club, the newness of the club is kind of the factors for it. Other than kind of like school tickets and all of that, there is no real way to encourage people to come and do so, to put it bluntly.
It's a sad reality, isn't it? It's a sad reality that the newness of the club being relocated as well to Livingston, an area pretty much slap bang in the middle between Edinburgh and Glasgow, where you've got 4 of the biggest clubs in the country. It's always going to be difficult to draw a sizable fan base. But yeah, kind of fans always look back to, oh, remember when we used to hand out the free tickets when we were coming up through the leagues? Oh, we used to get thousands and thousands in the gates. The reality is these people weren't Livingston fans, and that free ticket giveaway en masse, there comes a point where you need to turn these people into a paying customer to generate money for the football club. And I do actually think the way that they do the ticket giveaways now, where they do it maybe 4 or 5 times a season, I think is a better way of doing it, rather than just giving out free tickets every single week. Because folk will just come to expect that they get a free ticket for the game, and they won't ever turn into a paying customer, which is what the football club needs. They need these people to become a season ticket holder and paying every season to come back and watch the team. So yeah, short of giving out free tickets every single week, the reality is it's a long process. You're not going to turn our, say, 1,200 base of regular fans that turn up week on week. You're not going to turn that into 3,000-4,000 overnight. It's going to be a long process. With that comes sustaining ourselves in the top flight is always going to help instead of dropping down the leagues. I think we do make the season ticket as value for money as possible. Despite the increase this year, it's given you access to the women's team, the age group teams, the reserve games. So we've tried to make the season ticket as good a value as possible. We offer an under 16s ticket for 50 quid. Again, other than making the thing free, there's not an awful lot more you can do or offer it at a more cut down price than that. It's a long process. I think the last couple of seasons has seen kind of gradual increases on our season ticket sales, which is positive. But as I say, it's a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. There's so many things that the club could try, but whether that converts them into a paying customer is the caveat with that. The next kind of element.
Just to add to that, like the club have made so much effort into doing that, and I really do feel for the likes of Dave Black and that have put in so much time for it, and it must be kind of demoralising to an extent to kind of see those efforts and it not be kind of taken up. Hopefully, if we can maintain this kind of level of success in that it can turn into more people being Livingston supporters, especially from the local area. But yeah, until then, we're fighting a losing battle, it seems. But go on to that next one. I'll just steal that away from you.
Yeah, go for it.
Is it possible to have the TV cameras on the other side of the pitch so the stadium doesn't look permanently empty? You want to go for it?
I don't know what the logistics are with that, to be totally honest. I know the gantry is above the main stand, and I know the commentary is at the Section A area of the ground as well. So I don't know what I remember probably when we were back in League One Championship, I do remember, was it the Roger That Productions that used to do highlights for games? They did often base themselves in that, in the East Stand at the ground. Whether that's an option for terms of putting the sports scene on the Sky Sports cameras, I don't know, but I have a funny feeling there's probably depending on where the media room is and things like that at the ground, I would assume that the camera maybe has to be on that stand. Again, I don't know the ins and outs. Maybe it is something to direct to our new SLO as a question, if you're looking for more info on that.
In an ideal world, yeah, you would like to be showcasing, the fuller stand. But as you say, just where it's always been set up and all of that, perhaps like does the other side have, the functioning kind of area to be able to hold such like a high quality kind of camera and stuff like that. I also don't know if see like where the parking lot is there, where they allow the
parking lot. God,
parking lot.
You just turn American there.
Yeah, where like the big like production kind of vans is obviously on the side of like the main stand, and I don't know if that's like an easier access point and stuff like that as well. But I think it's logistically, ideally you would want it to be facing there. Would the cost and all of it to shift everything to that other side, you maybe have to start powering that other stand as well, like during games and stuff like that. Whereas like if it's not being properly used, I don't know if it's maybe something worth looking into, but realistically probably not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, as I say, it's maybe something to direct to the SLO. They might be able to give you a much better answer than we can in terms of if that is actually a possibility or not. But the last element to the question was, how can we as fans make the atmosphere better at the stadium? I've said this to you before, Angus. I feel like, in fact, we were talking about it on the way up to McDermott Park, and that the atmosphere at the ground, I feel like COVID's played a big part in that. We came up into the top flight off the back of those back-to-back promotions, and I thought the atmosphere at some of our home games was brilliant. Despite the fact we only have that main stand with kind of home supporters, and I feel like there's almost became maybe an element of a disconnect after that COVID season with the team, and there's obviously been a big turnover in the squad over that period as well. And I don't know if it is just maybe that disconnect with fans and team after that COVID season, and there's maybe not that same kind of buzz about us being in the top flight. I don't know if that has played a part in it, but from my perspective, I'm in section B behind the home dugout, and I try my best sometimes to get a little bit of atmosphere going in that section of the ground, and it's I'll be honest, it's very difficult. It's like pulling teeth to get folk to try and join in and create a little bit of atmosphere at that end of the ground. I know you're the opposite end of the ground for myself, next to the guys who are in C3, but yeah, it's just folk wanting to openly get involved and try and back the team, and I'm sure the players appreciate a noisy both home and away support. I know, there was a couple of games last year where we had a noisy away support, the likes of Rugby Park and Tynecastle just before the winter break, and the players were absolutely loving it, especially at Rugby Park when they were coming over after it full time. The likes of Nicky Devlin, Bruce, and Joe Newbley as well, celebrating the win. I think they really appreciate it when the fans do get behind the team and create a little bit of noise. So I would just actively encourage folk to try and get involved in it, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, effectively that's what it is, and I think that comes down to maybe mirroring the performances in that, and I think that maybe that last bit of form in the tail end of the last season's maybe played an impact as well, where it's not been the most enjoyable of times for us. I think it's just through those kind of moments you still have to kind of try and back the team and stuff like that. Obviously it can be hard to not be just seen as like a happy clapper in those kind of instances and that, but you still just want to back the team and spur them onto it. I think that Saturday there was a good example of what it can kind of do, and it did seem to be a good atmosphere, especially down at my end of the stadium. And I think that if we got a wee bit more of that again, it could make a good difference, and it will encourage more people to kind of to get on side with it and all of that. I think I would like to see a wee bit more of that kind of come into the away games as well, a wee bit more of that kind of presence, as you mentioned. That I think the Hearts game is always a good atmosphere for some reason. We always take a good support there just because of the logistics and stuff like that. The Kilmarnock one was decent. I think Dundee United last year or something like that was pretty good as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just kind of that consistency, and obviously completely understand that not everybody was able to make every game and stuff like that. We're just kind of got to make the best effort from ourselves and stuff like that, and hopefully people can join in, and that the performances in the park can merit it as well. But aye, all of that would be much more encouraging for us, and kind of get back to where we were that first season of the being back in the Premiership, because that seemed as if every game was very, very lively. Even the game against like the Old Firm and stuff like that, it seemed to be full of good spirits and stuff. I think what have we got here? Murray Dunn, genuine question here. What is Livingston's style of play, and is it becoming worse and worse to watch as a fan? I found watching Livy a real slog last year or so, and it's not necessarily even down to results. Brutal long ball pumps up the park. I can kind of understand, because this is something that we've very much touched covering the games you in, and for me as well, it can be quite hard to watch at times. This kind of last maybe 8 months or so, and I think that there is a fair justification for it. There's a reason why we've came on today and we've completely championed the likes of Dan Mackay's performance there, where it's been more direct and stuff like that. I would be lying if I said that the last year, the last half of a year or something like that has been fully enjoyable to watch us play. And yeah, I think that the style has been kind of feeding off of scraps essentially has been for the most kind of part. We've not been kind of direct enough, and I think that that's also why the likes of Joe Newbley's receiving a bit of flack, is because people are expecting this kind of like thing from him. The likes of Bruce Anderson's maybe struggled to get as many goals, and that's probably due to like the lack of service and stuff like that. So I think that there is a good element to it where you can look at it and be discontent with it for sure. I think that we have improved this season. I would say that for sure, and hopefully that that Motherwell game there is a good indicator of where we're going to be heading towards. And I think everybody wants their team to be playing a certain style of football that is enjoyable, and that for me that involves kind of like wing play and that. But you also have to kind of know your limitations with what's kind of available as well. Being discontent with the way that we're playing against the likes of Celtic and Rangers to me just seems kind of like nonsensical. I guess if you've got more of a issue with the way that we played against St Johnstone a couple of weeks ago, then that's completely fine, and I think that's open to criticism for sure. But yeah, it's just kind of finding that balance and being realistic is what we can do as a club.
Yeah, just to kind of talk on the style of play. I know Murray's tried to say, take away kind of results at the end of last season, but I think form can cloud your judgment on how your team's playing a lot. If you look at the back-to-back promotions, as much as I enjoyed how we played and our approach to how we played, you wouldn't say we played a sexy brand of football. When we had those back-to-back promotions, we played direct. We went to get the ball up the park quickly and play in the right areas, and we were very, very effective at doing it. With being effective at doing it, brought positive results, and all of a sudden you love our style of play. When results start not going in your favour, like the tail end of last season, it starts to become tough to watch, naturally, because the results don't reflect positively. If you look at the season after COVID, where we just missed out on the top six, so you kind of mentioned it earlier on, with the likes of an Odin Bailey, the likes of an Alan Forrest, Bruce Anderson up top, Joe obviously coming in second half of that season as well. There's an element of that where you have maybe the players to play a slightly different style of play. And I think that season, Davy made a conscious effort to almost try and move away from the quotation marks, long ball, hammer throwers, Livingston. I don't think we ever were that. I just think we played football in a way where we wanted to get the ball into the right areas of the park. And I think we had players that were very effective in playing in those areas when we did get it there. I think that season we made a conscious effort to try and change our style of play. And I think we did play a decent brand of football that season. But then, as is the case at Livingston, you lose players every year. We lost the likes of Bailey. We lost the likes of Forrest. And I don't think we maybe replaced them the same way last season. Throw into that the likes of Bruce being off form because he's maybe not getting that same service from those areas of the park that he had the season before. Joel's then had to come in as a number 9 instead of being out wide for sections of the season. We've had to get players to do jobs in other areas of the pitch. I think there's an element where sometimes you're not able to get like for like players in every season on our budget, and not every signing is going to work out. So I think maybe the change in style last season just reflects that we maybe didn't have the same success in our recruitment in terms of replacing players that moved on that season. This year, I think there's been a conscious effort by Davy that he wants to be a bit harder to beat. He's moved back to that back three this season, and I kind of talked about that. Is it building from the back forward? I think that's probably what Davy's wanted to do. He wants us to stop conceding goals. I think we've done that to a degree. We're harder to beat this season. We're not leaking as many goals. And all you can hope for is that we can maybe start moving further forward in terms of being a bit more creative further up the park. We spoke about replacing certain players who were creative. Like Dan Mackay coming in. He's been mentioned a lot in this podcast, but he's maybe more of a like for an Alan Forrest. So it maybe allows you to start playing a little bit more expansive because you've got the players in the building to do that. And I think our style of play, whilst we're in this league, it's always going to be a degree hard to beat. We'll play a little bit more direct, but it's going to be dictated by what personnel you have at your disposal in order to play certain styles of play.
Yeah, I think that part about the kind of personnel for sure. I think that when we went into the summer last season when we lost Forrest and Bailey, we were coming into the season, I think, hoping that Nubli and Bahambula were going to be the two kind of wingers that were going to be there. Obviously, Joel got off to a great start. Bahambula's maybe not quite worked out as we'd hoped. We unfortunately kind of, didn't kind of build the squad further around kind of those players. I think that we struggled to attract some other areas there. I think that this season we've actually benefited from the loan market again, bringing in likes of Mackay. Stephen Bradley's obviously came in from Hibson permanently as well, but still like a young player. But as you say, yeah, getting those kind of personnel is the right kind of thing. You don't want to just bring in a winger for the sake of bringing in a winger who's not good enough, to be honest with you, and then try to force that kind of style of play. I think that Davey's just being honest with the squad that he has and try to find the way that he can get the best out of them. Hopefully now, though, we've got a couple more faces in the building that we can, get back to kind of doing what we'd been good at. I think, yeah, for me, I'm always going to be championing that kind of style because I'm kind of fed up with the Pep Guardiolas of the world and all of that, removing wingers, removing number 10s and stuff like that, all this kind of inverted fullback nonsense and all of that. I'm just growing up watching the classic Man U teams, likes of Giggs and Beckham and then like Ronaldo and that later on. That's the style of football that I enjoy watching. And as much as it pains me to say it, likes of Liverpool in recent seasons when they had like Salah and Mane and that, they're just exciting teams to watch. And yeah, that's the kind of football you want to see. But I'm also honest with myself in knowing that we're not going to be able to be replicating that on what 1,000 for a budget that Liverpool have or something like that. But Dan Mackay walks in the Liverpool team right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he's in the running for the Ballon d'Or after his performance against Motherwell. Dan Mackay is literally, this is the Dan Mackay podcast this week, isn't it? I think I've lost count of how many times I've said his name.
A wing player, number 11. I think he's my favourite player in the world right now.
But yeah, I think, as I say, I think there's an element to it where it's, I think results cloud your judgment on your team's style of play quite a lot. And then I think just the personnel. This is not a disrespect on our squad. If we went out and tried to play a tiki-taka style of football, the chances are we're going to end up finishing bottom of the league. We need to play to our strengths. And I think, as you mentioned there, I think the manager is doing that with our squad. He is trying to play a certain type of way that gets the best out of our players and the best of our squad and makes us as competitive as possible. The last question from Chops On, interesting name. Is there any chance that the team put up some fight into a game? Asking on behalf of all the fans. First of all, are you asking that on behalf of all the fans? Because I'm not in agreement with that. And guess what? I don't think this one needs a lot of coverage, to be totally honest with you, but I thought I'd throw it in anyway.
Yeah, I think you can be discontent that, we've touched on the style of football quite heavily there. You can say that that's kind of the negative side. I don't think you could possibly watch the likes of a Jason Holt or a Scott Pittman or an Andrew Shinney and even the likes of Bruce Anderson up top. There's a lot of players in that team, Penrice, Brandon, the list kind of goes on, and that be your kind of main criticism of the squad. Sure, you can maybe seem that some players may seem, off their game or unwilling to do certain kind of things and all of that, but kind of creating like a blanket and throwing that over like the whole team is way too excessive, I would say, and I don't think that that's necessarily fair. You can be very unhappy about style of football, how much you want in that, but I think that that's not a reasonable thing to be saying, tarring them all with the same brush.
Yeah, I kind of echo that exactly. I think a team that has the likes of a Jason Holt, Scott Pittman's, Andrew Shinney's, these guys in your team, I don't think you could ever turn around and criticise a Scott Pittman or a Holt or a Shinney for lack of fight or lack of effort. And I think all you need to do is look at the results this season. We've lost three games out of 14 in competitive football. Throw into the friendlies, we didn't lose any of our friendlies. How can you possibly turn around and say there's a lack of fight about the team? We've had major budget cuts over the summer. It's been well documented. You're probably more up against it than we've probably ever been, whilst being in the top flight. And we're once again punching above our weight. Yet again, we're sitting with 10 points from our opening 8 games. We're sitting in the top 6. I can't understand how you can be so negative about the team. I think even if you look at some of the results we've got, the likes of Aberdeen, the likes of St Johnstone, the likes of Ross County, I think that's evident that there's a bit of fight about the team, a bit of character about the team, that they've ground out results in those particular games. Yeah, I can't
think,
understand how you can come
in
to
all,
that conclusion.
in all honesty, I think that this is probably directed towards one player, and that's probably towards Joel Newbley. And if you're a Livingston fan and you're unhappy with like the likes of a performance or anything like that, then you can have your opinion and maybe not wanting like somebody to be in the squad, or you can have your opinion that they should perhaps be dropped or whatever like that, to maybe give them like a kick up the backside or whatever like that. But I don't think I would ever kind of come on and say that somebody's not putting an effort in. Maybe it's just bad form. Maybe it's just not clicking for them, or the style of football, as we've touched already. But I think that I'll be kind of the first to admit that I don't think that Joel's maybe been as good as he can be this season. I think most people would probably agree with that. I don't think that I would go as far to saying that I don't think that he's putting in any effort and doesn't care or whatever like that, because it's just not true. It's simple as that.
I just don't think if you're a player that's not putting in effort, I don't think you're getting in a team that's managed by Davy Martindale.
Yeah, spot on.
Simple as that. And yeah, Joe might be off the boil. I'm sure Joe would admit that his performances haven't been as exceptional as his initial 12 months when he was back in the building after his loan move from Arbroath. But he wouldn't get in that team if there wasn't a degree of effort in his performances. As simple as that. Martindale wouldn't have him in the team. But that's all the questions for this round of question time. Thank you to everyone that sent in their questions, and we'll obviously do this again at a later point in the season. Finally, this week, we look ahead to our trip to Rugby Park as we take on Kilmarnock after the international break. I guess first instalment of El Plastico, the derby that everyone looks forward to in Scottish football. How are you feeling ahead of this one?
Confused. I think
confused.
that's the first thing that came in my head there. At the start of the season, Kilmarnock beating both sides of the old firm in that. I was kind of expecting them to, really kick on and be, in all honesty, I was like, they could finish third. Since then, though, it seems to have been quite mixed for them. And, they've probably lost quite a few games that they probably you'd have fancied them to go on to. I think, they lost at home to like Ross County. I think that there was a wee bit of controversy there. But there have been quite a lot of results that have happened for them that you've been like, oh, they like more negative as towards positive. They seem to have done the business against the two big teams. And then for the rest of the season, it's been a wee bit kind of mediocre. I think they below us in the table now as well, which was quite a strange thing. I think if you'd said to anybody once Kilmarnock had knocked Celtic out the party out of the League Cup that we'd end up above them before our next meeting, like 5 games later on or something like that, I think people would be quite surprised at that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think that kind of reflecting the Motherwell game there as well. I think they're going to be a similar kind of outfit. I think we know that they've got like a solid back line. I think we're just going to have to hope that their dangerous kind of players aren't kind of on it, like Danny Armstrong. I think even Vassell up front has been a bit of a nuisance. And, I think I've seen the highlights from the game against Celtic there that they are a dangerous team and they will create opportunities. But I think that they also can be had at as well. And, hopefully we've got some confidence going into this game and there's no reason as to why we can't cause them some problems.
Yeah, just kind of looking at that, and I was chatting to the guys on the Killie View podcast. Unfortunately, weren't able to come on themselves to preview the game, but we're looking to be going on to their podcast next weekend. But they did send making some kind of notes on their thoughts on Killie at the start of the season. As you say, I think after the first maybe 4 or 5 games, I think every Kilmarnock fan's going, oh, that's a positive start. You beat Rangers at home, you go to Tynecastle, draw, you've knocked Celtic out of the cup. But they've not won in the last 7 in the league since the opening day game against Rangers, albeit there's 4 draws in there. But there's a couple of disappointing results you would look at, as in probably being, I think they were they 2-0 up it, or they were 2-1 up, certainly late on at Dens Park, and conceded a late goal to Hearts in the League Cup tie at Rugby Park. losing to Ross County at home. So there's some disappointing results in there where I think as a Kilmarnock fan, you'd be looking to probably pick up points over the course of the season in those particular games. But yeah, that was kind of their start. Very positive to the campaign. And there's been a lot of kind of individual errors, poor defending, kind of coming in particular from set pieces, which I think was a big strength of Kilmarnock, certainly in an attacking sense last year, was from set plays with the kind of three big centre halves, which I think they do still pose that potential threat. And it seems to have become a recurring theme and conceding a few late goals as well. So that's kind of something that the guys from the Killie View podcast were talking about in terms of summarising their start to the campaign. But you mentioned a few of the danger men there, Danny Armstrong being one, 3 goals and 6 assists in both the League and League Cup this season. He obviously had a very successful campaign. I think came a little bit out the blue, even from a Kilmarnock fan's perspective last year, because might have seen him move on. I don't think any Kilmarnock fan would have been fussed had he moved on after their promotion from the Championship. They also kind of pointed out Matty Kennedy on the other side as offering a decent threat, and Brad Lyons in the middle of the park has had a very productive start to the season, 3 goals from midfield, including that winner against Rangers on the opening day. So those are players that we're probably going to have to be very wary of. I like the young lad, David, I think it's David Watson in the middle of the park. He's broke through, and I'm sure if he continues his level of performances, I'm sure there'll be big clubs coming sniffing around him. And you mentioned Vassell, he caused us a few problems in the game at Rugby Park after the split last year, scored Kilmarnock's opening goal in the game as well. So he's going to be somebody that we're going to need to be very wary of. But in terms of ourselves, looking at how we'll set up for the game, do you reckon there's probably the only one that you'd maybe be looking at is if Devlin's fit, does he come back in? And if so, who comes out the back 3? Most likely Sean Kelly.
Yeah, that's probably the one that you're maybe looking at. I think him being the captain and stuff like that would be a big boost to kind of have back there. I think that also coincides with, being away from home. Would Stephen Kelly maybe end up dropping out as well? Would you then have, Devlin goes in for Sean Kelly and then Sean Kelly goes into that midfield to just add a little bit more kind of steel into there? Or do you go and be positive again and reward the kind of team that played well there? Also, like Andrew Shinney's been on good form and stuff like that as well. So you kind of come into that squad for maybe Stephen Kelly as well. If you're trying to be a wee bit more, have a better balance of, the box to boxness and stuff like that. But yeah, I think we've just got to go there and be positive. There's no reason as to why we can't get any joy out of there. And I think that, with the personnel that's kind of been listed there, I think Devlin would make an improvement to the back line just in terms of like the leadership kind of qualities and stuff like that. Within that midfield, I think, kind of content with whatever kind of trio ends up in there from the kind of names that we've suggested. I think Pittman and Holt will definitely kind of probably keep their places, and that's kind of a toss-up for that third one.
Yeah, there's certainly options, but there's also, after a good performance against Motherwell and obviously a very good result to match it, is there a need to go and make wholesale changes to the team? I don't think there is. I could imagine a couple of tweets. The main one, as I mentioned there, being Devlin coming in because he is your captain, because he has had such a positive effect on the team this season in terms of his leadership qualities that he's brought into the side, and just his all-round performances have been very, very good to go with that. The only other one I probably agree with you is, does somebody like Stephen Kelly maybe drop out? Maybe Pittman moves forward into that one, and as you say, Sean Kelly or Andrew Shinney coming in as that holding pair in the middle of the park with Jason Holt. That's probably the only other change I would imagine possibly getting made to the side. But Stephen Kelly does offer you that little bit of creative spark in that area of the park and can come up with something a bit special. Always likes to have a little dig from distance, can chip in with a goal from there as well. So do you reward him for being in that side that got such a positive result against Motherwell and a positive performance? Remains to be seen. So I don't think there's a great deal in terms of what changes we should make. Certainly from a Kelly point of view, I think it's a bit of I think it got described as Derek McInnes's tombola last time we had the Killie View guys on the podcast, but it seems the case as well when I asked them what kind of system they typically play. and it was a 3-5-2, could be a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3. Just depends what he's thinking that morning. So, so they've not given a great deal away in terms of how we can expect Kilmarnock to set up. But I have seen a fair few, certainly games, and obviously watching sports, seeing a back three seems to have been probably the more preferred of their shapes this season. I think they played quite a lot with a back three last year as well. So I'd imagine that might be the option and almost matching us up. Again, it seems to be a recurring theme when we're doing previews for games this season. But in terms of where we could potentially cause them a few problems, they said that they've been struggling a lot with set pieces so far this season. So is that maybe an option to get Sean Kelly in the side for his delivery? Because he does offer a decent delivery with his left peg. And again, Stephen Kelly, again, offers a decent delivery with his right peg. Do you get those guys into the side to offer that additional threat?
Maybe Sean Kelly, just for the fact that he scored 2 penalties in a row now, are we finally shaking that hoodoo? He scored one against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park last season as well. Do we go and try and get 3 in a row? Who knows? Maybe that's the kind of instance to go for. Where was the last time we scored from a set piece, like a corner?
Oh, now you're asking. Oh, we scored from a few set plays up at Cove at the start of the season.
Against those bums, that doesn't count.
Look, they all count, Angus, regardless of the opposition. Regardless of the opposition, they all count.
That just took me back to Paul McGowan being a very angry man.
He was a very angry man up at Cove, wasn't he? That would explain a lot about his life choices, wouldn't it? We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very tight game. We've talked about it on this podcast already. I think there's not a lot to choose between a lot of sides. I think a lot of fans, based on Kilmarnock's recruitment over the summer, had Kelly as being a decent shout for top 6 this season. Again, off the back of their start to the campaign, I think they kind of were proving that theory right, but they have had that slump in form. As I say, they haven't won since the opening day in terms of their league games in particular. But how do you see it going now?
It's a while away, isn't it? I'll go for a 1-1 draw.
1-1, I think, could be the most predicted prediction over the course of this season. Yeah, I'm just going to copy it. I think I'm just going to, just to save me time changing the graphic, I think I'm just going to put in 1-1 for the remainder of the campaign. Yeah, I'm going to copy it. I'm going 1-1 as well. I'm going for a draw, which wouldn't be the worst result. Wouldn't be the worst result going away from home. But here's hoping we can get a decent following like we did that Friday night game through at Kilmarnock last year. Let's get a decent following through to Rugby Park, cheer on the team, and hopefully cheer them on to 3 points.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. We really appreciate you tuning in every week, and we'd love to hear your feedback. You can leave us a review on iTunes or drop us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
As Angus said, we are on Twitter or X or whatever it is called these days, Facebook and Instagram. So simply search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there, and any shares and likes are always appreciated. All our episodes are available on all the usual podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, and we'd love you to subscribe to the channel. None of those options suit you though. All you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you will find every single episode we have done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Let's hope for another great few weeks following the Lothian Sinus football team and Scotland as well.
Yes, I'm off to Seville on Wednesday, and I'm hoping to see Scotland qualify automatically for a major tournament for the first time since 1998. So come on, Scotland.
This is the place Livingston, we love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Armorville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, into the